If you are a frequent traveler or you have been to the other countries before the pandemic happened, especially, you notice that you need to go to the bank or go to the exchange place to change the currency of your own into the money of another country. And have you ever wondered why every country wants its own type of money? And let me explain that one by one. First, let's talk about the economic structure of a country. Different country in the world has its own economic system somehow, and it makes the price of the items such as food or groceries, housing, what else, luxuries are different from one country to another. And these differences of prices can be measured by a method called purchasing power parity or PPP, which is one of the most popular indicator to indicate the strength and growth of an economy, because the value of an item can be different in other countries. For example, a bottle of water in United States probably costs about $1 each. In Canada, it probably costs $1 Canadian, which is value less than $1 US. Meanwhile, here in Malaysia, one bottle of water is RM1, which is translated as only a $0.25 US. And the differences of these economic structures happen because every country has their own export product and also something that need to be imported. Some countries are heavily rely on commodity to export something such as oil and gas, electronics, and meanwhile some of the countries are reliant on the service-based industry, for example banking, financing, tourism. And there are also countries that are reliant on the remittance from the relative abroad, for example in the country of Tajikistan and Timor-Leste, and also in some developing countries such as Pakistan and India. As such, due to the differences of the value of price of items, food the best example, as such there is a differences of putting the value of a product. One piece of bread, let's say baguette in France, is not the same price as in Vietnam. And because of these differences in the structure of the economy comes the next point, the demand of supply of the currency. Actually, currency is a commodity of itself, even though it's like a medium, because people are trading currencies every day. And every paper money or every currency in the world, they have their own demand and supply which people want to have and also people want to spend on. The currency gets more demand when there are more domestic spending, which means that people demand more money to spend on in the country because they are rich or loaded or have some money after corruption perhaps. And another crucial point is that the demand of the currency is also dependent on the export value of a currency itself. And what is the relation between the export product and also demand of the currency? The reason is that when a country produces more products such as, let's say, durian, thus a country that produces durian sell to export it mainly to China, and China wants to pay the exporter, and the exporter absolutely they want to have a local currency because they want to pay the salary and pay for all the costs of the operation and production and such. As such, when an item is exported to other countries, so just the importer pay in probably in their own currency first. In the case of China, they pay probably renminbi, and then the exporter say, yeah, but I cannot spend the renminbi here. I change the Chinese yuan and go to the bank or change it back to Malaysian ringgit, and that is how the demand of the currency happen simply put on. And the supply of currency is the number of whatever heck the central bank want to issue the money. They can produce as much number as they can, but they cannot produce too much or the whole economy will collapse. I will explain later on. When the money demand is higher, so that the money value is stronger. When the demand for the currency is lower, so the lower the value against the other currency. One of the rare example of a currency getting appreciated, increase its value against the US dollar and against almost all currency in the world is Singapore dollar. The lion dollar is perhaps one of the very few currencies in the world that gains value for the past 20 years. In year 2001, a US dollar value about 1 Singapore dollar and 85 cents, whereas right now, just yesterday, the value of the 1 US dollar about $1 and 35 Singapore cents, which is Singapore getting the value. And you might ask, well, can my country just simply limit the money and make it higher than US dollar? Yeah, probably, but there is another point, which is the existence of different monetary policy. Different countries want to have their own monetary policy, and you may ask, what is that? Monetary policy simply means the policy to maintain the value of currency so that the economy is stable and there is no shock about the price. Today price may be 1, tomorrow you saw it, the price is already 10. So of course you don't want to say that. And these are the central banks of each countries in the world, almost all, because not all countries have their own central bank, and these central banks is mandated to control the money supply in the world. Too much money can cause hyperinflation, and hyperinflation happens when the banks issue too much money and the economy collapse and nobody wants the money, and people say that I am willing to spend any amount of the local money in the change of US dollar. So at the end, price is unstable. Yesterday is 100, today is 1000, and tomorrow is 100,000, and that is why the central bank cannot issue or print the money on their own, or it will end up like this one, 1 million lira of Turkey in year, this one is in year 2002. In different countries, central banks, the goal is still the same, to achieve the price stability, and to achieve the price stability in the market, which means that people will which means people don't get shocked when the price is double or triple in a single week or even single month. Of course, the government of a country want to control this kind of policy so they can have their own hand on what's happening outside, so they want to maintain the price not only for the people but for themselves, because rich politicians. And such, the most important point of why different countries have their own different currencies, because sovereign state is the highest political power available. It's not the United Nations crap. They cannot even do things in Afghanistan right now. Period. And such, the country have their own ultimate political power, so they can do what they want. And of course you don't want to see, of course nobody wants to see another country's king or another country's president appeared in their own country massively every day, except for the really bad situation. For example, in Malaysia, we used to look at the portrait of Tuanku Abdul Rahman every day, and of course nobody in Malaysia wants to see portrait of Sukarno Hatta or the portrait of King Mahavajiralongkorn. in the market because that is the national symbol. A country took pride of itself when they have their own national currency. As such, when the country achieve their own independence, especially on August, like in Malaysia, in Singapore. So when the country is forming up or separated, they have their own currency, which means that I am independent. And despite some of the currencies in the world are pegged its value, for example, Saudi Riyal pegged with US dollar and Brunei dollar, or locally known as ringgit, also pegged with Singaporean dollar. Even though the value is pegged, but people are proud of it because they have their own currency. And do remember that when people saw the portrait of a political figure, the king, the president, or even the famous monuments such as in the case of Uzbekistan, people took pride of it because you have something to show to the world and show to yourself. You have wealth and you have an identity. But of course, not all countries in the world have their own currencies to use of. There are some exceptions to this rule. For example, Euro. Euro is the collective national currency for the all Eurozone members, because not all the European Union members are using Euro. For example, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania didn't use Euro, but France, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Spain, Ireland, Portugal, and Italy, and the rest do. And the reason why Europe can integrate themselves into a single currency is because the economic structure of the Eurozone members, the first point of the economic structure, is so highly integrated because everyone knows what is being produced in the country, how much is the salary and the taxation and such, the price and the inflation. And most important of all, European system is really transparent. So the whole data is being laid there, and the decision maker can decide whatever they want about the euro because all the data is being there. Another example of the supranational currency is CFA franc, or used in the West Africa, used in the west part of Africa and also in Central Africa. There are two parts of the CFA, but basically just the same similar value of currency. CFA franc is currencies used by the former French colonies in Africa, and the franc is pegged the value with euro for the obvious reason. In France they use euro, so they just simply peg it. And the reason is that because of the volatile political situation and unstable economic development there, so it is such a really risky thing to develop a single currency for each countries in the CFA members. Such is much more makes sense to combine all and just make one currency because the value is much more stable. Now you have it, you understand why every countries in the world have their own currencies. Do you think that the whole world can integrate into a few currencies? For example, maybe you can just discuss down right below. Or you just think that it is necessary to have portrait of Washington, or it's just necessary to have a portrait of Washington and Franklin in America, or you just think that the national currency, your own currency, is simply a way to go because you really pride of. I made this video by the past experiences of traveling in a few countries, so I have collections of the foreign currencies in the closets. So I think that why shouldn't I talk about it? So thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new about currency today. See you in the next series.